want to fend for myself, and I want to build people up for them to fend for themselves. Hey, everybody, Clark Fredericks with the Free Like Me podcast. Guests come in here, speak their truth, and leave free like me. If you want to be a guest, reach out to me privately on any social media site or go to my website, freelike-me.com. Fill out a form, set up a consultation call, and you and I will chat and hear your story and maybe get you on the show. Coming July 29th, my book Scarred. It's up for pre-orders on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Goodreads, wherever you buy books. And a very exciting day today. After the podcast, I start recording here in the studio, the audio version of the book. So that'll be available for you also. This week is my guest, Nicole Lee. What a story. Abused at an early age. Dragged into the woods, walking home from school one day. Horrible things done to her. She became involved in porn, in stripping, in escorting. She became a witch, a Satanist. And today, after years of therapy, after getting sober, she believes in Jesus, believes in God, and she fishes for therapy. She actually goes fishing, and that's her therapy now. I love it. She's a totally different woman, and it's a fascinating story, and this is the very first podcast she's ever done, and she is super excited to tell you her journey in life. Let's meet her. Nicole, welcome to the show, my dear.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I feel like over the last month or two, we've become buddies. I really enjoy I enjoy talking to you. Like, we have great conversations.
I know, me too. Like, we'll jump on a call, and then like before I'll like even realize, I'll look down, it's been like over an hour, and I'm like, oh my God. I love it though. Like, I love like making friends like that, you know, like through like my story and like the things that I've been through and like how we connected. It's like so cool. You know, I love that I have another like strong male that I can like call and like run stuff by. You know what I mean? Like so many of my podcast guests, you know, like after they do the show, they'll reach out and they'll be like, am I allowed to reach out to you? You know, I have your phone. I have your phone number, but I don't want to bother you. I'm like, we are friends for life now. So absolutely. So I love that. Well, you'll have me annoying you for the rest of your day.
Well, you've got such a great, you know, like I just feel connected to people who've gone through hell and made it to the other side. And you've definitely done that. My intro touched on your abuse, what happened to you on the way home, that you were a Satanist witch doing porn, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I make like jokes all the time. Like now I'm like, you know, I used to think I was a witch. Like I've come to realize in my older age, like now I was just like, you know, undiagnosed mentally ill, like playing with crystals. Like, I don't think I was ever really like casting any spells or like had any effect in like the dark arts. But I definitely like, I played the part for sure.
I mean, you said it all.
I sent you some pictures.
Yeah. You said it all went into the lifestyle you were living. Like, all right, I'm doing porn and stripping, so it'll be cool to act like a witch and a Satanist, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Like I remember like one time, like, you know, like a random person that I had like met along the lines of my travels was like, hey, do you want to like take a bunch of ketamine and like go have like a seance like in the woods in England, like in this like random little like town? And I was like, absolutely. I was like, let's go, you know? And then like a couple hours later, I was like trekking it up a mountainside after like snorting a bunch of ketamine. And, you know, and then we had this like satanic ritual in this like Stonehenge area. And it's so funny because it was just a bunch of like 20-year-old kids, like not really knowing what they were doing. But I believe that like there's something there still, like, even though we're like innocently doing these things, I think that like practicing dark rituals in a sense just opens you up to some sort of darkness. I've always thought that, but yeah, we were wild.
Did you ever threaten anybody back in the day? Like if they like that you didn't like the way they were talking, I'll cast a spell on you. Watch it.
No, you know, it's funny. I think that's like something that's always made it pretty easy for me to like share my story and like speak about things and like call certain people out, because when I think about who Nicole was during all those times, like I really did like walk a line of kindness mostly, and like trying to always like protect the others around me. I was very like nurturing, and like I don't know, I grew up with like a lot of like dark trauma. I had some like really crazy things happen before I even got my first period. You know what I mean? I had already been through so much. So when I was in my 20s, I was at that point still always trying to like take care of everyone. So I always like I say, I'm like, I'll say whatever about anyone, because I know that like there's nothing that someone could come back with about me where I would have to be like put on the chopping block, so to speak. Does that make sense? Yeah, I always try to be really kind to everyone. No casting spells.
All right, I feel more at ease. I didn't want to say something wrong and have you
No,
start
and I don't mess with
burning
any of
stuff
that
and
stuff anymore. No, I actually had like I used to collect like really crazy occult artifacts. I had like really interesting books and like all different types of like art and weird pieces. I even had like some like human bones and like different weird shit we found off the internet when I was in my 20s. And like I had this like major clean out in sobriety where I held on to a lot of these books and things because like some of them were of value and I'd had them for so long. But I got to a point where I was like, I don't want any of this darkness around me. I don't want it attached to me. I don't want it near me. And I went through and I got rid of all that stuff. But I held on to a lot of that literature and items up until recently.
we'll get into all that. We'll get into how like that stuff started, and let's do a linear line of your story. Where'd you grow up?
I was born in a suburb of San Francisco, Daly City, San Bruno kind of area. I ended up in California because my mom, she got pregnant when she was a teenager. She was kind of already like partying and not really doing the things that like you would be thinking a mother should be like preparing herself for motherhood. So her father and her mother sent her from New York to California to basically like live with her aunt and uncle so that she could try to like get herself together and be prepared for motherhood. Unfortunately, like she wasn't really able to like manage being a mom. I mean, she was like 19 when I was born. And I got adopted by my great aunt and my great uncle. And I lived with them until I was about 8 years old. So I spent the first few years of my life in California. I had a really good childhood up until that point. My adopted parents were really well off. Like they owned bars and stuff in San Francisco. And we lived in like a 5-story house that overlooked the San Francisco airport. I had like every clothing brand name you could imagine, every toy, Disney vacations, camping, Yellowstone Park. Like I was, grew up going to church every Sunday and, did like CCD. And I really did have like a super, super solid like first 8 years of life for sure. I left California and moved over to Florida to meet my mom and get integrated back with her when I was 8.
Why was she in Florida now?
So she was living in New York, and then her dad and mom had decided to move down to Florida, which was pretty common for people that were living in New York. They were all kind of like buying property down here in the 70s. They moved down to Florida because they wanted more opportunity, better weather, and they were hoping that it would kind of give my mom like a fighting chance at like having a life for herself, because they had like a lot of drug rehabilitation programs down here, and that was kind of the start of them sending my mom off to get help with substance abuse. So to my knowledge is that's kind of why they picked South Florida. I don't know much of like what happened with my mom when she was living in Florida with her family, like when I wasn't with her, or how it was. I know how it was when I moved here to get integrated back with her.
How was it?
It was amazing, because even though I had this like great childhood and these great parents, I still always felt different. I wouldn't say unloved, but maybe unwanted completely, because I didn't have my biological mother and now I know as a mother myself to little girls, there was just this like energy, this like gravity that pulled me towards my mother, and it was like beyond my control, you know. So I was like so happy to be with her, and it was like going really well in the beginning. You know, we were doing lots of fun stuff. I was getting to meet like all my cousins and my uncles, and I had this big, huge family in Florida, and it went really, really good, you know, until it didn't. I would say like my first like realization that things were not normal was like my mom would like leave me with like random people a lot, let whoever babysit me. She would like take me to like AA and NA meetings when I was like really young, which like I've brought my kids to meetings, but that's like, you know, there's like a lack of protection for me when my mom was bringing me to a lot of these places. I realized really young that she was like doing prostitution and that there was problems with drugs because she was on probation. I have like a memory of going with her for check-in and her popping for cocaine, and her probation officer coming in, and I'm like 9 or 10 at this point, you know, and they're like, listen, like you pop for cocaine, like we're gonna have to let them know you're gonna have to turn yourself in tomorrow, like, you know, like just stuff like that. I ended up getting taken by the state around 10, because which you touched about this in the introduction. So like the first like big thing that happened to me, I guess that you could say was like traumatic as a child. I was walking to a friend's house after school. I was in the 5th grade, and a stranger who had like a history of pedophilia already approached me on the street with a knife, molested me on the spot, sexually assaulted me, and was like dragging me down the street, trying to basically saying like, I'm gonna kill you if you don't come into the woods with me, you know. I fought him off, and while I was fighting him off, a woman drove by. He got scared, he let me go. He ran down one side of the street, I ran down the other. I managed to get some help. The police found him. I had to go to like a couple of week trial, where I testified. Once again, you know, like think about a 9-year-old, 10-year-old having to like sit in a courtroom and like look at the man that touched her vagina and her butt and was like ripping her down the street and be like, you did this to me, like, you know, this happened. And I guess what I remember being told was that my testimony was compelling. He ended up being convicted. They gave him the max amount of time for that crime. Unfortunately, it was attempted kidnapping because he didn't successfully kidnap me. So he got 25 years. I never told the police about the touching part because at the time there was like shame and I didn't really understand. It took like years of trauma therapy to like pull out those memories of him actually like touching me under my shorts from the back when, you know, I peed my pants during that moment. Like that also was like something that I didn't remember until down the road. So he probably could have gotten more time, but unfortunately the resources weren't there for me as the victim back then, and I did the best that I could in that situation. Because of my mom's lack of care, DCF came in and was like, man, you can't even pick your kid up from school. You're living in a trailer in Davie. There's no food in the fridge. You're popping for drugs. You have this non-American citizen boyfriend living here with an outside his visa. It was just like a whole disaster, right? So they came in, and then that's when I got sent to, I kind of started my, like, I call it my group home tour. You know, I just basically kind of had like, I was going from group home to group home. And the way that it worked back then is like, if you had family members that were willing to kind of pick you up on the weekends from the group home, you could go back and hang out with your family on the weekends, which it kind of seems a bit counterproductive to take a child away from the mother because she's an unsafe place. We're going to put you in a group home, but on the weekends, the mom can pick you up and then you can stay with her. So I was living in the group home, but I was going home on the weekends. And then there was just stuff happening on the weekends that was
chaotic,
to say the least. We talked about this a little bit, and like I haven't really shared this part of my story like publicly before, but there was so like at 9, I was almost kidnapped. I was molested. I survived that. And I remember after that happening, it took me like a year and a half before I could probably be around a man. Like if the doorbell rang or if someone came to, I would like hide in a closet. It was like, there was so many crazy trauma responses during that time that the time I kind of acted normal again was like closer to my teenage years. And my mom, you know, like I said before, she would work. She was a prostitute and an escort, and she was also like thieving during the day and like selling, like reselling clothes, whatever, you know how it is being an addict, whatever you got to do when you're a woman. I'm going to steal, I'm going to sell my body, I'm going to do whatever I got to do. And I just was constantly being left alone with like guys that were like in their 20s and around my mom's age. So I have like really distinct memories, two particular times where like I literally was being like chased around my mom's apartment by like one of these older guys who was like pulling at my pants and like trying to touch my breast. And you know, and at this point I'd already been through something like this, so I'm like, I know how to be like, I'm like in survival mode. I'm like, you're not going to touch me, you know what I mean, you stranger man that I don't know. Like um but then my mom would also have family members watch me, male family members. And then there was an instance, a couple of instances where one of these male family members that she was dropping me off to, um, at the time, like, and even into my 20s and early 30s, I thought it was just like weird. You know, I didn't, it was like something that, and then once I finally sat down and like told a therapist about it, they were like, he molested you. And I was like, no, I've been molested before, that by the stranger. He tried to, no, it's the same. But because it was a family member, there was a disassociation for me there. I had been abused by a stranger. I knew how to be safe from them. But everyone in my family had always been so loving and caring, at least on the outside, that it was very confusing to me. It happened 2 or 3 times, and nothing like penetration or anything like that. It was just like inappropriate fondling, touching. But the last time, I'll never forget, like there was something different. And I remember like, and like you've been abused as a child, like, you know, those like, you know, when you've already been touched by someone inappropriately and like you're still a little kid and you feel it coming, you feel it's like a feeling in your stomach, and you start getting really like, how do I make this happen as quickly as possible so it is over as quickly, or how do I get out? That's where you're, you know, do we get this over with to get me out of here, or do I try to get away again? And then it happened, and it was like one of those moments where I was like, what is it going to be? And I was sitting on his lap, and he was doing the same things that he does normally, touching my back, my breast, fondling my butt, my thighs. And I felt him get an erection, and he grabbed me closer and he said, come on, give blah, blah, blah a kiss, you know, give me a kiss. And we always kissed in my family, very big, oh, I love you, goodbye, hello, you know what I mean? And I went to give him a kiss, closed mouth, and he shoved his tongue in my mouth. And that to me, and once again, only something that a survivor or a victim of childhood molestation would get, is the tongue in my mouth was so much worse than him touching my breast or him grazing his erection against me. That was like, it was worse than the man that tried it. It was like something so, like, I watched it on TV, romance, making out intimate for this man that I knew was my family member. That was it. And I freaked out. I had like a little manic episode, and I ran out of his house. He lived on the intercoastal, and I hid at the end of the dock, and I waited there until my mom came back to pick me up. At this point, it was in the like early day, and now it's dark. I'd been out there all day by myself. And I got in the car with my mom, and I looked her in the face and I said, you're never going to bring me back there again. And I think that she realized why. We didn't talk about it, but I never went back there again. And he stayed away from me after that. And then, you know, later on in life, like a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with my mom and another female older family member of mine. and they told me that the same thing happened to them with the same family member, and it was like all the light bulbs and the, that was a really crazy realization, to realize that not only like had my mom had suffered the same type of thing, but she didn't realize it yet, and she was still trusting enough to have this person babysit her daughter. That's something that she'll have to live with for the rest of her life.
Yeah, it's frustrating to hear. You and I talked about that on the way here today. Yeah, I mean, out of anybody, she should have realized I can't leave my daughter with this person, and yet she was, whether it was just in denial, the drug use, the whatever, maybe it was just a one time off thing with me. He's not going to do it to my daughter, but pedophiles don't stop. It's not.
And the thing that's so crazy is like you said, pedophiles don't stop, and not only do they not stop, but there's clear signs before they ever even get caught. But I think people don't want to be awoken to it, or like realize that, in a sense, because this man, like when I think about the years I spent with him, like leading up to that point, um he was at Bartenders Bash every year. He was the biggest, big time, big money in all the local strip clubs. I have a distinct memory of going to Publix with him one day when I was a little girl. And these two like beautiful, they look like mermaids, like just long, blonde, little like halter top hippie Florida vibe girls, and they were all over him, and I remember him like hugging them like a pervert and grazing their butt. So all these years, I thought, oh my god, here's this man that everybody loves, he's so popular, he owns businesses in town, he knows everyone, da 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 da. No, like looking back now, like every photograph I can find of him and I can show you, he's with some young girl with her boobs out, or any memory I have of him was him being gross with women. And I'm like, now as like, healed through that trauma, I'm like, am I surprised? No, predators like that, they don't see family as a boundary. Anyone is up for grabs. I believe that. If
Yeah,
they think they can get away with it.
yeah. So you have this sort of dysfunctional upbringing. You had a good first 8 years of your life with your aunt and uncle in California. Everything was great, and now you're in Florida with mom, and with there's sexual abuse with a family member. There's getting drug into the weeds by a guy with a knife, walking home from school because your mom wasn't there to pick you up. Um, so things have, like things are in motion now to set you up for where you're going to go in life, like
For failure. Set me up for failure.
yeah. Like you said, everybody you met, like what you became with, adult film star. And you're like, nobody he like had a father who was a hedge fund manager from Connecticut
No. Yeah,
vacationing
like
on the
they're
Hamptons.
even when I was with like the most famous of mainstream porn stars, like no one at that dinner table was like, yeah, my parents went to Yale, and I got my first BMW when I was 12, paid for it. Like, no, like they were like, yeah, my dad touched me when I was a kid, or, oh, I grew up in foster care, or, my mom and dad got a divorce when I was really young, and there was like the common thing that we all shared as women in that industry was not having protection by the people that were supposed to take care of us the most. And
Right.
that's what we shared in common. And most ex porn stars or even current porn stars, well, most of us won't admit that, but that's true. It was just trauma bonding nonstop. It's like, oh, everyone hates you from your hometown because you were like a promiscuous, runaway. Like, me too. Like, let's all just be friends. And and that's kind of like how they stick together. But yeah, no, there was nobody that was like the picture of perfect mental health shooting porno.
So you have these things in place now as you're going to progress forward. Didn't you tell me like at 17 you got emancipated and went off on your own?
Yeah, so let's picture like I'm around like 14, 15 years old, and I'm in and out of high school. I've been to Job Corps, I've been to Covenant House, I've been to all these places, and I'm kind of just like bouncing around. In that midst of all of that happening, I was supposed to go back to my mom's house to be able to continue high school at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, which like everybody knows at high school. The high school I went to is very famous because it was the Valentine's Day massacre that happened there. So I started going to that high school and I was living with my mom and everything was going really well. And I was supposed to get placed back with her full time. Right when that was about to happen, my mom violated probation. It come to find out she was like making acid in our house with her friend Chemo. They had like an acid enterprise. And here I am, completely unbeknownst to me. I'm like going to high school at this point. I've like kind of worked through all this weird shit. I was playing basketball. I was actually pretty good. And I was drawing. I was kind of getting to a point where I was like, all right, I might be able to like get out of this like path that has been laid out before me. And then they came back around and they were like, no, you got to go. So when DCF came in that final time, I went and I did another couple of weeks at Covenant House, and I called my case manager and I was like, I can't stay here anymore. I don't want to stay here anymore. I want to like go somewhere where I can go to school. This is basically just a bunch of underage kids hanging out. Like, I want to do something. So she was like, okay, let's do this. Right. She was like, let's work at getting you emancipated so that you can live on your own. She was like, but there's certain things that you have to be doing because you've been in trouble in the past and there's different records of you had, little weed here and there. You're going to have to be doing a certain amount of things to get the judge to sign off on it. One of those things is going to be going to AA meetings. We're going to say that you're sober, you're going to these meetings, and you're going to therapy and yada, yada. So when that kind of started, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I was sent to live in Halfway. I wasn't currently using drugs. I wasn't on any drugs. I was maybe smoking weed, trying things here and there, but I was definitely not drinking or a partier, not known like that at all. But they sent me to a halfway house. I was 16 when I got to the halfway house, maybe like almost 17. And I met an older girl that lived there. She was actually the house mother. We became really good friends. And she got me dancing. So once I started dancing underage in Pompano, I was able to finally start making some money to be able to make the emancipation process happen faster, if you will. Even though the state was going to set me up in an apartment, you still had to have money to like do things,
Let me just stop you a second. So what, like 16, 17, you start stripping, and how'd you do that? You got fake ID to go to the club with, or?
So there is this club off of Copans in Pompano. It's actually still there. It's been a strip club since I was a little kid. It's just changed names and owners tons and tons of times. But the house mother's name, her name was Becky. Becky was like, hey, me and my girlfriend, they were lesbians. They were like, hey, me and my girlfriend are dancing at this club. Like, I was like, I've never stripped or done anything like that before. And she's like, it's just topless. Like, and I'm like, well, I'm not 18. And she's like, you don't have to be 18. They don't ask for your ID or nothing. All you have to do is just go and dance to one song on stage and try out. And if they like you, you can have a job. And I was like, at this point, like you said, let up for failure. I was like, sounds good. And then I got there and I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be, but I'm here now. Let's get it done. And I did. I worked there. I worked there for like 6 months before they ended up getting raided, shut down, and then in the whole thing. But at that point, I'd already been stripping for long enough to where I was like really good at it. 6 months is like pretty long to do a job at that age. So I just basically, that started me into dancing. I went to the next club and the next club. And then, I was a really good stripper. I say that all the time. I was really, really good at my job.
And why did that club get raided? For drugs, for underage girls dancing?
Underage girls.
So you weren't the only one.
Everybody was underage. Nobody
really?
in the was over 21. Nobody. And none of us were over 18. Maybe one or two that had been there since like 10 years. You know what I mean? Like the ones like the old ladies that have been there forever. No, everybody was underage. And to my knowledge, and like I've investigated that strip club for another case and another thing, that's been a common occurrence with that club since it opened in the 90s, or I think actually it was the late 80s that it opened.
So that's got a little pedophile vibe to it then.
It's a pedophile vibe, soliciting sex, underage dancers. I mean, like what I believe now is at that point, you've lost your privileges. Just shut down the doors, turn it into a Goodwill. I don't know, something, but it is still a strip club today.
Wow.
So like at that point I'd been dancing for so long. I'm pretty promiscuous, you know. I I started like social media started becoming a thing, and I ended up starting MySpace. And I don't want to, I hate saying like I was like MySpace famous, but I had like a pretty high traffic profile. I basically just became like this really well-known like hot tattooed stripper that like went to music events and just had this like really cool life. And that was pretty much it. So before the MySpace thing, this really big thing that like lots of tattooed girls that were into like music and kind of like into that whole alternative lifestyle were doing, there were these like nude websites for like just tattooed girls. One of them that's like really popular, a lot of people will have heard of, is called Suicide Girls. So I kind of already had like a name for myself in like the underground like music culture, and I ended up applying for Suicide Girls, and I didn't get accepted because one of the girls at the time, it was a very small website, it hadn't blown up yet. One of the girls didn't like me. There was something like she dated a guy in a band that like I hooked up, and it was something stupid, and they ended up denying me.
So you got this little vibe going, underground tattooed chick, and tried to get on the Suicide Girls, and that didn't work out.
Yeah, so like I wanted to be on this website, and like I've always been a writer, so like I wanted to do something with like band interviews or journalism. So like that was kind of like my goal board or whatever you want to call it. That was like what I wanted to do. And I tried out for this website. I got denied because of logistics, whatever. And through MySpace, I saw an advertisement for this website called burningangel.com, and it was promoting itself to be Suicide Girls, but more punk rock and like more authentic. Um, and I clicked the link and I went to the website and I filled out a thing to be a model. Immediately, I was then messaged on MySpace by a man who said, "Hey, I am the owner of burningangel.com. Um, you know, I just got your model application. Like, I would like love to get to know you, and we would love to take pictures of you for our website. That is about like, punk rock women and like music, and like, we're nude and we're being free." It was just supposed to be this like, amazing thing that they were doing, and like he really wanted me to be a part of it, and I was like perfect for it. So we started communicating, and the communication turned into like every day all day long, and it went from like him being the owner of this website that I was gonna like take pictures for, to him being like, "Oh, I want you to like come take photos for the website, but like also come to New York and like be my girlfriend," basically. So like we had gotten into like an online like romantic relationship, me and the owner of this website. We started corresponding before my 18th birthday. It was not until my 18th birthday or a little bit after that I then flew to New York for the first time and actually met him for the first time. I got off the plane at the airport in New York City. I flew into JFK, and I remember like, or maybe it was LaGuardia, I can't remember either one. There's only two, but whatever. I flew into New York, and I remember getting out of the airport, and like, when you go to pick up your bags and there's like people waiting for you, he was there waiting, but I didn't realize it was him because he looked nothing like his pictures. Nothing, not his body type, nothing. The photos that I saw, they were old photos. The man that was waiting for me was like 300 pounds and looked like 45 years old.
Oh boy.
When I was standing in the airport, we talked about before that feeling that you get when you're a little kid and like, you're about to be abused, or something bad's going to happen to you. I hadn't had that feeling in years. I had like a complete remission from the fear of being attacked by a man or hurt like that until that moment in the airport. It was like my stomach kind of dropped, and I knew instantly. I was like, I'm fucked. I'm so fucked. I am fucked. Just by looking at his appearance, I knew I was fucked. He just looked like a overweight, obese, piggy predator, like, not clean shaven, just bad hygiene. Like, it was just awful. And I walked up to him, and he was like, "Nicole?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh my God, like I'm so happy you're here." And he grabbed me, and he like instantly like tongue kissed me, and it was awful. And that was the first day of my porn career.
Oy.
That was the first day. So
and like I said earlier, like you're set up for failure. Like you never even knew your father, right? Your mother's a drug addict who's prostituting herself. You've got family members who have abused you. And you're off on your way now in the Big Apple. So where do we go from here with this creepy dude?
He brought me back to his apartment in Queens. It was disgusting. It was small. This is the first time I'd ever been in New York City. I'm like, I'd been to like I'd been to like upstate New York, but I'd never been to Manhattan or Times Square, any of that stuff. So I was like, wow, this is like a really big deal. And we get back to his apartment in Queens, and I wasn't even there for 10 minutes before, he took my clothes off, took my pants off, forced me to give him oral, recorded it without asking. Back then it wasn't like they weren't using he had like one of those like old looking cameras. And and then he had sex, he assaulted me that night. And I stayed with him for like 3 days and just endured like some of the most disgusting, volatile, grueling sexual acts that I had ever been in my life up until that point. The time he had introduced me to the rest of the people that worked for the website and some of the other models, I started forming relationships with them, and I was supposed to be in New York for a week. So this is like a couple of days in. I became close with one of the other males and females that worked for Burning Angel. And I basically was like, I can't stay with this guy. Like, I don't want to be here. And I didn't have to say much. They must have already known, and come to find out, he had problems with other models coming forward and saying the same thing. Like, hey, I thought I was going to be on this website, but he's like filming me giving him a blowjob in his Queens dingy apartment. Like, it's not adding up, right? So they must have had like other things happen, and other women had said things, because they ended up being like, come stay at the Burning Angel office with us. So I left him and I went over to the Burning Angel office, and I stayed there for a remainder of the trip, which was like the best couple of days of my life. Like, it was amazing. Parties, meeting celebrities, feeling important, not having to wait on lines at clubs when there's like a line around, to be who I was and where I was from. I was like, this is crazy. And not only that, but like, it was all these people that I had looked up to my whole life, like in that world of like punk rock and alternative kind of music and lifestyle. So I felt like I was like, I'm here, I made it. And I went back home after those like amazing few days, and I was like, I want to move to New York. I was like, and Burning Angel was like, we want you to move up here, and we really like you, and we want you to be a really big part of the site, and we want you to be like, right under Joanna, the next big girl on the website. And they were like, we want, we're going to have you do band interviews. Like, we'll send you to shows. And that was true. I did stuff like that too, and they're like, we'll have you help on the back. Cause I always wanted bigger. Even when I was like dancing on the pole, I was like, how can I own this place? Like, how do I get to the steps to be the owner? I was always thinking bigger than what I was doing in that moment. That was like what, like the first, like, 2 years of working in the adult industry and working for Burning Angel was. It was really great, honestly. It was a really good time. And then, dun dun dun, we made a deal with a mainstream porn company to buy 10 of our films, and that's when everything changed. Was when our little punk rock porn company that we were shooting in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, with just us, turned into actors and actresses coming over from LA, directors being brought in, and everything kind of just like changed, and we sold out. Like, it was, everyone sold out.
So those first 2 years, you are doing porn with Joanna, Angel, Burning. What was that guy's involvement? The original guy with Burning Angel, was he involved in it?
So the original 3 owners, 2 men and Joanna, they were all friends in college. Like, Joanna went to Rutgers. Like, she comes from money. So do the other 2 gentlemen. There are these 3 rich Jewish kids from New York. They all went to college together, and they were like, let's start this website. So he was the owner of the website. The first year of Burning Angel being launched, he was the main man in a lot of the videos, filming with me and the other girls, until everyone started complaining about his behavior, and then they slowly started pushing him out. And then the time Joanna moved to LA, he was completely pushed out of Burning Angel and had nothing to do with it anymore. He wasn't even turning up to like our parties or events or anything like that. There was never like a discussion about why, or like it was, I mean, I knew why, but he was just basically one day he was there and then the next he wasn't. And then it was just Joanna and Mitch that remained the owners of the website, and that continued on with burningangel.com and making, you know, the next set of films.
What is your porn moniker at this stage? What are you going by?
We came up with the name Kylie Cross. It's spelled KYLEEKROSS. Now it's funny, at the time when they first met me, I was straight edge. So there's this saying in straight edge that we used to say, nailed to the X, you know, nailed to the X or whatever.
And just explain to the audience what straight edge is.
So no drugs, no alcohol, no promiscuous sex, nothing like that. Like you just like live this life of like clean, serene purity, you know, to be the best version of yourself. And so the name was kind of a tie on that. And then Kylie, I don't even remember, like we were literally sitting in the office shooting around names back and forth, and it just kind of clicked. It was just like Kylie this, Kylie or and it was like Kylie Cross, and it was like, ooh, we like it. And they're like, do you like it? And I was like, I like it. And they're like, that's your name. So I actually got given my name pretty early on. The first video I ever filmed, we had already like figured out what my name was going to be.
And you were cool. You were cool when you got up there. Like once you got away from that guy, you were cool. Like with Joanna, to like start filming, you know, these independent porn movies.
At this point, Joanna had become my best friend. Like when I moved to New York, I didn't have any money like to live anywhere, and they weren't paying us. Not, you know, they were paying us shekels. Most of the work we did was free. So I lived in the Burning Angel office, and she lived in the office. It was set up to be like, it was like a loft kind of like business work living space. And we spent every day together. And then eventually we became so close that she was like, listen, I'm going to take you with me to work at the strip club I work at in Jersey. Like, a lot of people don't know, because I don't like people knowing that I'm still dancing, because she's trying to write a book. She's starting this porn company. She's trying to like phase out. She's like, but I go to Jersey and I dance. Like, I'll bring you with me. So then I started driving with her and commuting with her to Jersey every night to go dance at this club. It was called Hot 22. It was like a pretty well-known full nude strip club in Jersey, right over the Brit, like right over the other side. And we just became best friends, dude. She was like my older sister. I mean, we did everything together. We were together every single day. So yeah, I was having a blast. I loved it. Like I told you, I stopped loving it when we were filming Joanna's Angels 2. That's when, you know, we had been purchased by a mainstream company, which like I've told you I can't say the name because I have NDAs signed for legal purposes, but we were bought by a mainstream porn company to produce a certain amount of films, and Joanna's Angels 2 was the first film. So that was our first movie where we now had actresses and actors coming from LA. So that's when they flew out some mainstream porn stars to come out and be in Burning Angel movies. So, you know, you got to think you're mixing people that have been in porn for years. This is like their whole world, in with like a few women that had no tie to porn, that just one day were like, let's just start doing. It was just really crazy, you know? It went from like being like fun and free and a choice to being unhealthy, unsafe, coerced, forced, lots of like things being covered up, like STDs, abortions. Like it was like night and day. It really was. And I started hating it.
So are you tested? Are the other actors and actresses tested as well, but yet you're still getting STDs and having abortions?
So when I was filming, we went through a medical agency called AIM, Adult Medical Industry. It's called. It's basically like where they send you to the doctors to get tested. And like, yeah, of course, like if you have a shoot planned and you're going to test the day before, you know, and your test comes back clean, it's being left up to you, like that trust and responsibility that you are not a clean test when you have to perform the next day, but nobody abides by that. And so of course STDs are being passed around on porno sets. That was like really, really normal. When I was around, a lot of shame was tied to it. Like I remember like they would like to like let everyone know who popped for an STD so that we could point shame and blame. And I had tested positive for STDs with when I was shooting with them. And it was always like you kind of were always like made, you were put on blast about it. Really, it was like a whole thing, you know. And then like other directors would hear, and it was like, ew, you know, Kylie got gonorrhea, like tested positive for gonorrhea during the shooting of this project. Like when like really like you don't know if I got it, you know what I mean? It was just it was crazy. There was like big projects where there was documentation, there was testing, and then there was little projects where there wasn't documentation and testing. It was really down to like whatever was happening in that moment. It was just kind of always like a fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing. I mean, I remember we'd have shoots where like a performer wouldn't be able to make it that day, and they'd be like, who can we get? Like, oh, like, do you want to be in this scene? Like, even if it was someone that had never done that, or maybe like they don't even do porn, they'd be like, anybody want to get in the scene right now? Like, we're here, we've spent the money, you know. And it was just kind of that's when I noticed everything kind of going crazy, and I was like, you know, I had an aha moment, and I told you about this. Like, there was a moment when I was shooting porn and I was loving it, and I was standing by my convictions and everything I was doing. And I was like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then there was a moment where I was like, no. And in that moment, it was the groomed could have become a groomer. Basically, I was at a shoot I was not meant to be at. I was not meant to be filming. I got dragged into a scene that there was no documentation, no paperwork, no testing, nothing for. And the girl that was in the scene looked like she was 13 years old. She looked so young. And I remember looking at her and looking at this whole like setup and everything around me. And it was in that moment where I was like, I can either do this and then stay and like continue, or I can like stand up and know that this isn't right and I need to walk away. And it was in that moment that I walked away and I never went back. And that was in 2010, the summer of 2010. And I actually like I sold everything I owned, and I went and lived in another country for almost 4 years just to basically start over.
I had mentioned earlier, you know, like during this time, like, you know, filming porn, you know, stripping, escorting, you know, you thought it was cool if this is when you became a witch and practiced, you know, black magic, and it just seemed to all be tied in together for you, right?
It was that mixed with, at the time I was dating a pretty famous tattoo artist from New Zealand, who had been like traveling all over the world tattooing at the time, was like really well known on social media, and kind of like, you know, had this life that he had built for himself. And he was basically like the healthiest person I had around me at the time. And he was the one that was like, this isn't normal. Like what's happening here isn't okay. Like you need to get out of this, and let me help you. And he basically helped me move to Europe. And I went with this boy, my boyfriend, and we moved to London, where he tattooed, and he helped me get good at tattooing, and basically just start my life over. And while he was like a really like great person in my life and a great boyfriend, and he helped me get out of that world, he still himself had a lot of his own demons. The whole like satanic Satanism and like witchery kind of like evolved much more in that relationship with him, because he used to tell people that he was like a direct descendant of like Aleister Crowley, and like he was just really into like weird stuff. Like if you went to his social media pages back then, it was all like animal sacrifice type shit and like weird occult imagery. And I was already obviously like a little bit weird and kind of into that stuff already, so being with him just kind of like, you know, shot that into even further. And when I was living in Europe and I was traveling around with him, something that he was really into was like going to like catacombs or like old graveyards. Like I went to Auschwitz and Birken with him in Poland. Like we went to go see, like he just always wanted to go to like places that were like known for having like nothing but like despair and sad feelings. And then that intertwined with like lots of like satanic rituals that we did and like little like weird seances, and like we went to like different stone circles around different places in Europe and England, and would have like these weird like ceremonial event thing. It was just all really weird. And we ended up breaking up, for like typical just, young kid bullshit. But I I got pregnant while I was living in England by somebody else, and we decided to have the baby and get married and have a family, and that's what we did. And when I was pregnant, I couldn't get health care out there, and I wasn't able to get my visa extended. So I moved back to the States, and I came back to Florida in 2012 when I was pregnant, and it was the first time I had been to Florida since I left when I was a teenager. And I basically moved back to my hometown to try to blend in and start a family and just have some normalcy. And I got really good at tattooing. I guess people would say, like, I don't, it feels weird saying that about myself, but I traveled around, picked up a bunch of sponsorships, won a bunch of awards. I think I have like over 60 awards in black and gray tattooing around the world. And I really just kind of like on paper made like a really good life for myself. Internally stuffing, while everything is kind of like stuffed down, everything that happened as I was a kid, in my teens, in porn, everything was just, I just kind of had it in Pandora's box. And I was just waking up every day and being a mom and being a well-known tattooer, and just going out and producing good results and basically not like looking at my own shit. And eventually everything kind of just hit me like a ton of bricks, dude. It took the air out of me. And it was after my second baby. I got pregnant with my second during COVID, and I had a COVID baby. And I don't know if it was like the isolation mixed with a second baby and a failed second marriage. I don't know if it was just like a mix of everything, but I ended up having my first ever like panic attack during that time. And to go my whole life without ever like remembering or feeling like I had had a panic attack, and to have one for the first time in your late 30s, it was terrifying. I thought I was dying. And that first one just triggered, them happening regularly. I mean, at the worst of my mental health before I went to treatment this last time, I was having like a panic attack or anxiety attack once or twice a day.
Wow.
It's completely debilitating. Anyone that suffers with that, they know. Through postpartum, my alcoholism really took off, and I started, going to treatment for mental health and my alcoholism. And through that, I started I remember watching your soft white underbelly story, and you talk about when you sat down with that one therapist it was like, you'd been with therapists, I've been with therapists my whole life on and off, but I'd finally sat down with like that one that just really cared and saw me, and they were honest with me, and they had let me know that everything that I had been through and everything that I had been doing was actually like really, really dark and super abusive, and it had shaped me into this like really like empty, sad person. Um and it really forced me to start working through those traumas. And with working through all those things, I started learning the definition of things like rape and sex trafficking, grooming. I learned what domestic violence looks like, and I was able to kind of pick out all the events that had shaped me as an adult and had turned me into this person that I just fucking hated, that wanted to be dead. Multiple suicide attempts, treatments, there that and nothing really like ever clicked until um in last summer in July. I went to treatment that one final time, and I just got a really good therapist who cared. And I was able to start working out that stuff and actually maintain some sobriety. And now I have almost 3 years sober.
With my coaching clients, I have them do a trauma timeline. And if we did a trauma timeline with you, like after 8 years old, it's just trauma. Like, and you just mentioned, like I'm this empty, dark vessel, and all you did was you weren't really putting any light into your life or your body or your being or your soul or your mind from 9 years old on. It was just trauma. It was pain. It was more trauma.
Like using my trip to Poland it's like a perfect example of that. It was like, even when I should be like traveling and doing something fun and living this new experience, I decided that I wanted to go to Auschwitz. It's like I spent 3 days there, like doing like the full tours. And like, it was like, even in the happy moments, I was surrounded by darkness constantly. Like, that's something that's changed completely about me. Like Nicole today, like I don't seek out sadness. I don't want to see it anymore. I know it's there. I know it's around. I know it's real. I feel like I started kind of like, like we talked about, like I go fishing now, and I camping and I kayak and I surf, and I'm like really into like just connecting with my community and like other survivors. Like it's crazy how my perspective has shifted so much. But like nowadays, like if someone told me tomorrow you can go on vacation and you could pick anywhere in the world you want to go, I could tell you what, I probably wouldn't pick Auschwitz. I'd probably pick a happier place to go on vacation.
How did you go from being, thinking it was cool with, your porn star friends and with this one boyfriend to do satanic rituals and witchcraft and how did you go from that to now? You told me, like, I believe in Jesus, I believe in God, and I fish for therapy. Like how did you make that transformation to like suddenly having faith?
I think like growing up as like a state kid that like got into sex work and porno. And what happened was is I became an adult who pays taxes, has to work like a real human being, has kids in a public school system, and worked in sex work in the porn industry. And my views shifted. They really did. Not only just like my morals, but like my political views and like the things that are important to me today. Like there has been such a massive awakening in me in the last 2 years was when my perspective really started shifting on like, I realized like I used to think I was like super independent and we were different and punk rock. No, we were just a bunch of sheeps being led by older sheeps, being force fed this garbage that, you know, we never were, I was never like, I never learned asking questions free to be a free thinker. It was always like someone else kind of like showing me how I should feel or telling me how I should feel or telling me what I should do. And I honestly just got so fucking sick of it. It was like, I was just so claustrophobic from like everyone constantly. And I was like, I want to make some of my own decisions. And I started doing some of my own research. I went back and got my high school diploma. I started deciding that I wanted to go and, get a degree. And I started really like educating myself on like the things that are happening around me. And when I did that, I was able to make my own educated choice of what fits right for me and what aligns with me. And it couldn't be more opposite than who I was back then. Like for instance, like something that is the biggest change is to go from someone who was like such like a strong feminist porn star, like anarchist, like speaking like, like it's my body, like free the nipple, to now speaking against porno, thinking that we should abolish it completely, seeing the massive issues with sex work and pornography and what it means for the future of our children. It's that in itself is so crazy. And I do believe that, I truly do believe that there is no such thing as ethical sex work or pornography just because I've done it. I can say that, even at
Right.
the best of times, it was never really the best of times.
If if you see like some of these rallies, a lot of the women that are screaming and at these rallies, let's say
They
anti-Trump
look
rallies,
just like
they
me.
they look
They
identical
look
to
just
you.
like me. I know.
Yes, it's
And that's like
amazing
a
you
whole
just
nother
said that.
that could be like a whole nother episode, is like, you want to start breaking down about what I feel about myself when I have to wake up and look in the mirror every day and I look like this. It's awful. It's awful. I am embarrassed to have pink hair. Like, it's like, and that's another thing that's really crazy too, is like, it's true, like, that was something I've really enjoyed watching online right now. And I'm probably going to lose a lot of followers for this, but it's the lefties losing it thing. Every single person having a manic episode freaking the fuck out looks just like me. And they're typically a white woman with blue or pink hair covered in tattoos. And what I've come to realize is they're just mentally ill and they haven't realized it yet, and that's where I was. I was right there with them, like, God. And that's something that was like another reason why I wanted to start sharing my story too, is I think it's really important for women who look like I look to speak out about that, because you can be tattooed and have an alternative look and still have morals and believe in the sanctity of marriage and not be a fucking predator, like, and unfortunately, because of like what's going on around us in politics right now, yeah, you're right, like, they look like me. It's not a fun place to be. I go back and forth all the time with, like, should I get all my tattoos removed on my face and my hands, like, so I can just look normal? Should I dye my hair back to brown so people will take me more seriously? Like, sometimes I feel like my story doesn't matter as much because of how I look, and that's difficult to navigate, but that's my own shit. And some days I wake up and I look in the mirror and I'm like, you look great. Like, you look exactly how you're supposed to look, and you earned those tattoos and you deserve them. And I have to remember that I can't be like, I can't lump myself in with those people based on my appearance.
Yeah, so you can look like you and have a full-time job and have to get your kids to school and have conservative values and look at how much you're being taxed and like
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, and change your perspective, your political perspective as well. And I think it's amazing that you've evolved into the person you have. And
Yeah, I mean,
and you
there's so
can
much
look
work to
like
do
you
still,
do
but
and believe in God and Jesus.
yeah, I mean, the Jesus thing for me, like, that, where that kind of came in, that was before I started feeling close to God and feeling spiritual. Really, what got me into believing in Jesus Christ and the stories in the Bible was looking at history and science, was doing a deep dive. And it honestly, it was Joe Rogan that really got me into starting to look into that deeper. Was once I realized that he was a believer of certain things, and like, he had kind of started talking about like the history and the science behind like the proof that Jesus is real. That's when I really started kind of like searching into it more, and like, I was able to find like the answers to what I was looking for, and that there is in fact proof of that being, of him being a real person and those being real things that happened. You know what I mean? Just as much so as the Civil War and the proof of that. Just, and how we've like gotten to a point in life as like community and like a civilization where we like denounce that, and like we say like, no, 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 like that, like the Civil War happened but Jesus didn't. It's like there's the same type of proof showing that this event and that event both took place. And that's really when I started like believing in Jesus and like the stories of the Bible, and getting closer to like, that, starting to believe in God, and that there's, a power greater than myself, and that I'm not in control of anything, came through sobriety.
Right.
And that, that was like, oof, that was a whole thing in itself. Like, I never thought I was worthy enough to be close to any God, you know but that was something that connected me to Jesus too, is that like all of the women closest to him, like even Mary Magdala and like even Joan of Arc, like they were all like kind of poor. Some of them were prostitutes. They came from nothing, and then they turned out to be these like really like prolific women in history. I think that's fucking cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of people don't like tying their name to like a woman like me, with a history and a past like I had. So that like resonates with me.
I think it gives you a bigger platform to speak out when you have a history like you have. You've been on one side of the fence all the way down that side of the fence, and now you're on the other side of the fence, and like, Who do you want to listen to if somebody doesn't even know what the other side of the fence is like? Like, I want to listen to you because you've been down that road.
I post like quite controversial like stuff on Facebook. Like I've had a couple posts go viral, like, you know, talking about different things. And like, you know, like I'm still very careful with the things that I share publicly when it comes to a lot of these views and this change in me, because unfortunately I've lost a lot of business because of it, you know. To be a female tattoo artist, like most of my clients are liberal, like sex positive, pro sex work, like type of people, you know. When I started my Facebook and I started kind of talking about some of my views changing and these things, I lost a lot of business and I lost a lot of followers. So it's hard, you know. It's really hard, and that's just another reason why I walked away from that side to begin with, because you know, the incapability of recognizing that you can have difference in beliefs and still work together to make our community and the planet a better place to be on, right? You don't have to like agree on everything to just want where we exist to be comfortable and happy. You know, I would never tell anybody that I wouldn't be their friend because of who they voted for or what their beliefs are on abortion policies. It just is, it's not a reason to not be friends with someone, you know. If anything, it makes me want to like have more conversations about that stuff.
Amen.
You know,
Yeah.
I've had a bunch of abortions. Like I've, you know, worked in sex work. I've been a Satanist. I've dabbled in witchcraft, and I didn't become a statistic and made it out of that, you know. But it's still really hard to talk about because, you know, I get called like a homophobe and a racist now and a bigot. It's crazy. Like, which is wild because I identify as a bisexual woman, so I don't know how I could be homophobic. But it's weird once you start kind of like asking questions and like doing your own research and changing your views. You get a target on your back a little bit, you know.
You're not in the mold. You're not fitting into the mold anymore. You know, you broke out of the mold.
Yeah, I'm no longer fitting in with those people anymore, you know.
People wanted to find you on Instagram. It's Nicole Lee Tattooer.
So my Instagram is just Nicole Lee Tattooer. And then I use Facebook a lot. It's I use Facebook for like more personal and like the stuff outside of tattooing that I do. And then Facebook is like a lot of tattooing. Tattooing mixed with I've been like outing predators locally. Like it's something that I do. That's like mostly of what my Instagram is. It's like me outing predators and pedophiles and tattooing. But yeah, you can check me out on Instagram.
And if I wanted to give you the last word, you know, to sum up your journey or where you're at in life, or you know, anything else you want to impart to the audience before you go, you know, here's your last word.
Something that's super important that I want to like portray and like also want to like say to anybody listening is, if there's anyone listening that is like currently doing sex work or currently doing pornography and you don't feel like it's aligning anymore with who you are or what you want for yourself, and you're scared to get out or you're scared to like make that change, like reach out to me. I have resources. There's another way of life. Like sex work isn't the answer, pornography isn't the answer, and you can be redeemed. Like you can, like even me, like the lowest of the bottom of the scum of the dark of the, you can be redeemed, and there's like there's a better life out there for you if you want it. And also I would say that, you know, we got to start having more conversations about like the harms and dangers of pornography and like really like what it's doing to us as like a culture and like our community and like love and marriage. And I mean, it's just, I think having more people and more women specifically who have been in it like I have speaking out about it, it just it's gonna be more likely that we're able to, make some changes in the industry, and at least for the people that are still there that can't get out, and bring some awareness to the people that were there that, maybe didn't have the best time, that aren't doing so well today. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much the only that's like I have like OCD, and that's been like my big hyper fixation, has been this like just like bringing awareness to to the fact that like you do have, there can be a quality of life worth living for a girl like me, for sure. Suicide and drugs, like, it's not the answer.
Right on. I've got this follower, and she's going to be on in August, and she's active still. She's your age, and her and I, like you and I, have like an hour will fly by on a conversation before we know it. And the same thing happens with me and her. Like I thoroughly enjoy talking to both of you. And Danielle's going to come on in August, and she's still escorting and doing porn right now. And just, I think you two, would be great at hooking up. She just worries. She's caught in that trap where she wants a real relationship, and she can't find one doing what she's doing. And I'm like, you're caught in this hamster wheel, until you get off that hamster wheel. I go, you're gorgeous, you're beautiful, we have great conversations. I go, you could get any guy you want, but you can't get it while you're in this lifestyle. And like, she's not giving it up yet.
It's crazy because like I couldn't have a healthy relationship in porn. I still couldn't have one outside of it. I'm still working on that. Even being out of the game for 25 years, I find it difficult having romantic and meaningful relationships. It's really hard. Like, and that's something that they didn't tell us when we were first starting out. You don't realize how many things in life will be so much more difficult because of the choices that you've made for work. Yeah, I actually have like a few really good friends that still do porn and are OnlyFans girls, you know what I mean? Like, and I support them fully. Like, I just and they know that if they ever want something different, or if they ever need someone, that I'm there for them. But it's not that's their decision, and it's their path, and that's up to them. I think that if OnlyFans would have been around when I was doing porn, I probably would have done porn a lot longer. But unfortunately, there was no independence like that, or independence. I'm kind of glad that I was already out before it started, because I think if I would have gotten wrapped into OnlyFans, I think it would have been very difficult to walk away from that.
Right. All right, Nicole, great journey in life. I couldn't be prouder of you for like surviving through those dark years and making it out alive, and just carving out a new life for yourself. Bravo. And you and I will stay in touch, because I love talking to you. And thanks for sharing your journey.
Yeah, I love
here.
talking to you too.
All right.
Yeah,
thanks.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
And there you have it, everybody. Nicole Lee, tattooer. Man, what a journey. Just all the odds were against her. Abused early on, mother, drug addicted prostitute, got into porn, met creepy people, thought it would be cool to practice Satanism and witchcraft, and just filling her life with darkness, just nothing light, nothing good. And here she is now, finally, in her 40s, turning it all around, and being a mom, being a girlfriend, being a productive member of society. So it's not over for anyone. Just don't lose hope. You can turn it around too. We'll see you next week. Peace.